The sleek, black helicopter hovered above the cityscape as Arthur Sterling gazed out at the glittering lights of New York City. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his responsibilities settle onto his shoulders. As the heir to the Sterling global empire, he knew that every move he made would have far-reaching consequences. As the chopper landed on the rooftop helipad of the Blackwood University's imposing main building, Arthur felt a mix of emotions: excitement, nervousness, and a dash of rebellion. He was about to embark on a journey unlike any other one that would allow him to see who people truly were when they thought no one was watching. Arthur donned his most convincing disguise: a tattered backpack, faded jeans, and a threadbare hoodie as he made his way into the university's grand atrium. He had spent months perfecting this persona: Artie, a struggling scholarship student from a low-income background. The idea was to blend in seamlessly with the other students, to observe without being observed. As he approached the registration desk, Arthur felt a flutter of anticipation. Who would notice him? Who would care that Arthur Sterling, the most powerful man in the room, had just walked into Blackwood University disguised as a charity case? The registrar's eyes narrowed behind thick-rimmed glasses. "Name?" "Artie Jenkins," he replied, trying to affect a humble tone. The registrar raised an eyebrow. "Scholarship student, huh? Well, Artie, you're in luck. We have a room available in our dormitory. Room 314. Arthur smiled wearily. "Thanks, I really appreciate it." He scribbled his signature on the registration form, trying to contain his excitement. As he walked out of the atrium, Arthur couldn't help but feel like a fish out of water. The university's Gothic spires and imposing architecture seemed to loom over him, casting long shadows across the courtyard. He had always been used to the luxuries of wealth: private jets, five-star hotels, and endless resources at his fingertips. But here, amidst the hallowed halls of Blackwood University, he was just another face in the crowd. Arthur made his way to room 314, feeling a pang of uncertainty. What lay ahead? Would anyone notice him? Did anyone truly care? As he settled into his new home, a sense of unease crept over him. He had no idea what kind of people he would meet, or what challenges he would face. But one thing was certain: Arthur Sterling was ready to see who these students truly were when they thought no one was watching. And so, the game began. The charade of Artie Jenkins had started, and only time would tell how long it would last. Arthur spent the first few days at Blackwood University getting used to his new surroundings. He attended classes, joined a study group for his business course, and explored the campus. As Artie Jenkins, he kept a low profile, avoiding drawing attention to himself. However, it didn't take long for him to notice the stark contrast between his own humble circumstances and those of the university's elite students. They flaunted their designer clothes, expensive jewelry, and luxurious lifestyles like badges of honor. Arthur had grown accustomed to seeing people who were genuinely wealthy, but these students seemed to be compensating for something. He witnessed them mocking each other's outfits, making snide comments about others' grades, and openly flirting with whoever caught their eye. The air was thick with an unspoken competition, as if they were all vying for the top spot on some invisible social ladder. Arthur found himself becoming increasingly disenchanted. He had never been one to judge people based on their wealth or status, but here, it seemed like those things defined everyone. Even Elena, who appeared kind and genuine in her interactions with others, couldn't help but fit into this mold. She dressed impeccably, carried herself with confidence, and effortlessly charmed those around her. As the days went by, Arthur grew more withdrawn. He stopped attending social events, skipped parties, and isolated himself from his classmates. Elena was the only one who seemed to notice, approaching him in the library during a particularly grueling study session. "Hey, Artie, are you okay?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "You've been looking a little down lately." Arthur forced a weak smile. "Yeah, I'm fine, Artie. Just a lot on my plate, that's all." Elena nodded sympathetically. I know how it is. Sometimes, we just need someone to talk to. If you ever want to grab coffee or study together, I'm here for you." Arthur felt a pang of gratitude towards her. It was the first genuine gesture he had encountered since arriving at Blackwood University. As he watched Elena walk away, Arthur realized that he needed to shake off his funk and start interacting with others more. He couldn't let the university's toxic atmosphere consume him. With renewed determination, he began attending classes more regularly, participating in discussions, and even joining a few extracurricular activities. The more he engaged with his classmates, the more Arthur noticed Elena's kindness towards everyone, regardless of their social standing. She treated the wealthy clique with respect, but didn't coddle them. She offered words of encouragement to those struggling, and genuinely listened when others needed someone to talk to. Arthur found himself drawn to her warmth and compassion, even as he struggled to reconcile his growing feelings with the fact that Elena was one of the very people he had initially dismissed. It seemed like everyone at Blackwood University wore a mask, hiding their true selves behind layers of pretension and posturing. But Elena's authenticity shone through, making her an oasis in the midst of all this superficiality. As the days blended together, Arthur could help but wonder would his charade continue indefinitely, and what lay ahead when he finally revealed his true identity to Elena and the world. Arthur's newfound appreciation for Elena's kindness and compassion had him re-evaluating his approach to navigating Blackwood University. He found himself looking forward to their chance encounters in the library or during coffee breaks, where they would discuss everything from literature to music. Elena remained oblivious to Arthur's true identity, but he couldn't help feeling a sense of belonging whenever she was around. As the weeks went by, Arthur noticed that Julian Vane and his clique seemed to be losing their grip on the social hierarchy at Blackwood. Their bullying tactics had been met with growing resistance from students who were tired of being intimidated. The atmosphere on campus was shifting, and Arthur sensed that the wealthy elite's power was waning. One evening, as he was leaving the library, Arthur stumbled upon Elena working on a project in the study lounge. She looked up, surprised to see him, but then smiled warmly and invited him to join her. They spent the next hour discussing their shared love of literature and debating the merits of various authors. For the first time since arriving at Blackwood, Arthur felt like he was part of something genuine. As they parted ways, Elena handed Arthur a folder filled with notes and research on a topic she thought he'd find interesting. "I know you're really smart," she said, "and I figured you might want to check out this article I found on the intersection of psychology and philosophy." Arthur was touched by her thoughtfulness and promised to read it as soon as possible. Over the next few days, Arthur found himself looking forward to his encounters with Elena more and more. He started attending her study group sessions, where they would engage in lively discussions about everything from ethics to economics. As he got to know her better, Arthur discovered that Elena was not only kind, but also fiercely intelligent and passionate about making a positive impact on the world. Meanwhile, Julian Vane's clique continued to implode. Their business ventures were tanking, and their reputations were being shredded by the very people they had once lorded over. The once invincible Vane family was now fighting for survival, its legacy in tatters. Arthur watched it all with a mixture of schadenfreude and detachment. He knew that his own charade couldn't last forever, but he was enjoying the ride while it lasted. As he sat in Elena's study group, listening to her insights on everything from climate change to social justice, Arthur felt a pang of regret for having initially dismissed her as just another poor student. As the semester drew to a close, Arthur found himself wondering how much longer he could keep up the facade. The stress was starting to take its toll, and he knew that eventually his true identity would be revealed. But what then? Would Elena still consider him a friend? Or would she see him as the embodiment of everything she had once despised, a symbol of the privileged elite? As Arthur pondered these questions, he couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude towards Elena for being the one person who had seen beyond his mask and treated him with kindness. He knew that when the truth finally came out, their friendship would be put to the test. But for now, He was content to bask in her warmth and enjoy the rare moments of genuine connection they shared. Arthur trudged through the campus quad, his eyes scanning the familiar surroundings with a mixture of exhaustion and frustration. The stress of maintaining his dual identities was starting to take its toll. As he walked, he couldn't help but think about how Elena had effortlessly woven herself into the fabric of their little group. She was the glue that held them together, always ready with a witty remark or a sympathetic ear. Arthur found himself looking forward to their study sessions more and more each day. He loved watching her eyes light up when she discussed her passion projects, her face aglow with excitement and purpose. As he approached the student union building, Arthur spotted Elena chatting with some of their classmates. She was laughing and gesturing animatedly, her dark hair bouncing with each movement. He felt a pang of envy. Why couldn't he be that carefree? Why did he always have to be Arthur Sterling, heir to a global trillion-dollar empire? He pushed the thoughts aside and approached Elena's group, trying to blend in as usual. They welcomed him with nods and hellos, oblivious to his inner turmoil. As they sat down at their favorite table, Arthur pulled out his notes and began reviewing the material for their upcoming exams. Elena caught up quickly, her analytical mind devouring the information like a starving gazelle. Arthur watched her with a mixture of admiration and trepidation. How long could he keep this charade going? The rest of the evening passed in a blur of laughter and debate. Arthur found himself drawn into their conversations, sharing his own thoughts and insights on topics ranging from artificial intelligence to environmental sustainability. For a brief moment he forgot about his dual identities and simply enjoyed being part of the group. As they parted ways, Elena leaned over and whispered something in his ear. "Hey, Arthur, you should come with me to this charity event next weekend. It's for a great cause supporting underprivileged students in our community." Arthur hesitated, unsure how to respond. A charity event? That sounded suspiciously like a trap waiting to be sprung. But Elena's enthusiasm was infectious, and he found himself wanting to be part of something bigger than his own little world. "Okay," he agreed finally, trying to sound nonchalant. "I'll come." Elena grinned, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Awesome. I'll send you the details later. Thanks for considering it, Arthur." As she walked away, Arthur felt a twinge of unease. What had he just gotten himself into? And how much longer could he keep this charade going? He shook his head, pushing aside the doubts and focusing on the present. For now, he was content to bask in Elena's warmth and enjoy the rare moments of genuine connection they shared. The clock struck midnight as Arthur retreated to his dorm room, lost in thought. He knew that eventually, his true identity would be revealed. But for now, he was happy to savor these fleeting moments of normalcy with Elena by his side. As he drifted off to sleep, he couldn't help but wonder what the future held, and whether their friendship could withstand the storm that was sure to come. Arthur's eyes fluttered open as the dorm room door creaked open, revealing Elena's bright smile. "Hey, Arthur! I'm so excited for this charity event tonight. Are you ready?" She bounced into the room, her enthusiasm infectious. Arthur rubbed his eyes, trying to shake off the lingering sleepiness. He had almost forgotten about the event, caught up in his own thoughts and worries about maintaining his secret identity. Yeah, I'm good," he said, forcing a smile onto his face. Elena's eyes sparkled with excitement as she handed him a small folder. "Here are the details for tonight. We need to meet at 6 p.m. outside the auditorium. Don't worry about dressing up or going casual." Arthur took the folder, trying to appear nonchalant despite his growing unease. What had he gotten himself into? He wasn't exactly known for his charity work, and Elena seemed so invested in this event that it made him nervous. As they headed out of the dorm room, Arthur couldn't help but wonder what kind of trap he was walking into. Was this some sort of setup to humiliate him further or expose his true identity? He pushed aside the doubts and focused on enjoying the evening with Elena. The charity event was being held at a luxurious hotel downtown, and as they arrived, Arthur was struck by the glamour and sophistication surrounding them. Celebrities, business moguls, and socialites mingled and laughed, sipping champagne and nibbling on canapes. Elena grabbed his hand, leading him through the crowd. "Let's get some drinks first," she said, her eyes scanning the room. Arthur followed, trying to blend in with the sea of strangers. As they waited in line for their drinks, Elena leaned in close, her voice barely audible above the din. "Arthur, I have a confession to make. I know this might sound crazy, but I've been doing some research on you." Arthur's heart skipped a beat as he turned to face her. "What kind of research?" Elena's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Just little things here and there. You're not who you seem to be, are you?" Arthur felt his gut twist into knots. How had she figured it out? He was torn between relief that someone knew the truth and panic about what this might mean for their friendship. Before he could respond, Elena's grip on his hand tightened. "Don't worry, Arthur. I'm not going to expose your secret or anything. I think you're amazing, regardless of who you are." Arthur's eyes locked onto hers, his heart racing with excitement and trepidation. No one had ever spoken to him like that before, with genuine kindness and acceptance. As they received their drinks and continued through the event, Arthur couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to balance his dual identities and still have a connection with Elena. The evening flew by in a blur of laughter, music, and conversation. As they said their goodbyes and parted ways outside the hotel, Arthur turned to Elena with a newfound sense of vulnerability. "Elena?" he whispered, his voice barely audible above the city noise. "Can I ask you something?" Her eyes sparkled with curiosity as she leaned in close. "What is it, Arthur?" He hesitated, unsure how to phrase his question. Do you think we can have a future together? Like, without my secret getting in the way?" Elena's smile faltered for a moment before she nodded. "I don't know what your secret is, Arthur, but I do know that our connection goes beyond just being friends. And I'm willing to take the risk and find out what happens next." Arthur's heart soared as he smiled back at her. Maybe, just maybe, they could make this work and create a future where their dual identities didn't have to be a barrier between them. Chapter 6. The days that followed the Grand Founders Gala were a whirlwind of activity for Arthur. As the new owner of Blackwood University, he was immersed in meetings with administrators, professors, and students to discuss changes to the institution's policies and programs. His dual identities as Arthur Sterling and a scholarship student created a unique set of challenges, but he was determined to make it work. Elena remained by his side throughout this time, offering support and encouragement. She had never been involved in the corporate world before, but her natural business acumen and quick thinking proved invaluable as they navigated the complex web of university politics. One afternoon, as they sat in Arthur's office discussing a proposal for a new scholarship program, Elena turned to him with a mischievous glint in her eye. "You know, Arthur, I've been thinking, maybe it's time we take your secret to the next level." Arthur raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her suggestion. "What did you have in mind?" Elena leaned forward, her voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. "I think it would be amazing if we started a business together, something that combines our skills and interests. We could use the university as a launchpad to create something truly innovative." Arthur's eyes lit up at the idea. He had always been drawn to entrepreneurship, and the thought of working alongside Elena was exhilarating. "I love it," he exclaimed. "But how do we make it happen?" Elena pulled out her phone and began typing away on a notes app. "Let's start by brainstorming ideas for businesses that would complement our skills. You're an expert in finance, and I've got experience in marketing. The possibilities are endless." As they worked through their list, Arthur realized that Elena was more than just his friend. She was a true partner. Her creativity and enthusiasm were contagious, and he found himself getting caught up in her excitement. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Julian Vane, looking pale and beset by worry. "Arthur, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice laced with desperation. Arthur's expression turned cold as he gestured for Julian to enter. "What is it?" Julian took a deep breath before launching into a tale of financial woes. His family's business empire was on the brink of collapse, and he needed Arthur's help to save them. Arthur listened patiently, his mind racing with the implications. As the new owner of Blackwood University, he had the power to make or break Julian's future. But could he truly forgive the man who had tormented him for so long? Elena watched the exchange with a keen eye, her expression unreadable. She knew that Arthur was struggling with his own demons, and she wondered if this was an opportunity for him to finally find closure. As the meeting drew to a close, Arthur made a decision. "Julian, I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself, but you have to prove yourself worthy of my trust. Can you do that?" Julian's face lit up with hope as he nodded eagerly. "Yes, Arthur. I can do anything." Arthur smiled grimly. "Good. Because your future is hanging in the balance, and mine too." As Julian left Arthur's office, Elena could help but feel a mix of emotions. She was glad that Arthur was considering giving Julian another chance, but she was also wary of the consequences. She had seen how Julian had treated Arthur when he thought no one was watching, and she didn't know if Julian truly deserved forgiveness. Arthur, on the other hand, seemed to be lost in thought as he gazed out the window. Elena approached him quietly, not wanting to disturb his thoughts. "Hey, what's going on?" she asked, her voice soft. Arthur turned to her, a hint of introspection still in his eyes. "I'm just trying to figure out if I can really trust Julian," he said honestly. Elena nodded sympathetically. "You have every right to be cautious, especially after everything he put you through. But what's the point of forgiving him now?" Arthur asked, frustration creeping into his tone. "It's not like it'll change anything in the past. He still bullied me, and I'm still dealing with the aftermath." Elena placed a gentle hand on his arm. "But maybe forgiveness can help you move forward," she suggested. "Maybe by giving Julian another chance, you're also giving yourself a chance to let go of some of that pain and resentment." Arthur looked at her thoughtfully, his expression softening ever so slightly. "You know, Elena, you have a way of making me see things from different angles," he said, smiling faintly. Elena's heart skipped a beat as she felt a flutter in her chest. She had grown accustomed to Arthur's quiet appreciation for her opinions, but this was the first time she had seen him genuinely smile at her words. Just then, the phone on Arthur's desk rang, shrill and insistent. He picked it up, listened for a moment, and then nodded before hanging up. "What is it?" Elena asked, curiosity getting the better of her. "It's my assistant," Arthur said. "The Vane family's business empire is officially bankrupt. Their assets are being seized, and they're facing foreclosure on all their properties." Elena's eyes widened in shock. "That's quite a fall from grace, isn't it?" Arthur nodded grimly. "Julian's family has been trying to salvage what's left of their reputation, but it's too late. They're going down, and there's nothing they can do about it." Elena felt a pang of sympathy for Julian, despite his past actions. She knew that Arthur was trying to make a point by punishing the Vane family, but she also understood that sometimes people made mistakes without realizing the full extent of their consequences. As the news sank in, Elena turned to Arthur with a determined glint in her eye. "You know what? I think this is an opportunity for you to show Julian that there's more to life than just revenge and retribution." Arthur raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her suggestion. "What do you propose?" Elena smiled mischievously. "Why don't we invite the Vane family to a meeting with us? We can offer them a chance to rebuild their business from scratch, under our guidance and mentorship. It'll be a chance for them to learn from their mistakes and start anew." Arthur's eyes narrowed thoughtfully as he considered her proposal. Elena could see the wheels turning in his mind, weighing the pros and cons. Finally, he nodded. "You know what? I think that's exactly what we should do. Let's give Julian a chance to redeem himself. And maybe, just maybe, we can all start anew. Elena beamed with pride as Arthur smiled at her, his eyes sparkling with a newfound sense of purpose. She knew that this was just the beginning of their journey together, one that would involve ups and downs, but ultimately lead them toward a brighter future. As they sat in Arthur's luxurious office, surrounded by sleek glass tables and floor-to-ceiling windows, Elena couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and nervousness. This was the moment when she would bring together the Vane family and Arthur to discuss their proposal. Arthur smiled warmly as he entered the room, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Elena, thank you for setting this up. I'm excited to see how Julian reacts. Elena nodded, her heart pounding slightly in her chest. She had been worried that Arthur might not take her suggestion seriously, but he seemed genuinely enthusiastic. The door opened, and Julian Vane strode in, his usual arrogance replaced by a look of desperation. His eyes darted around the room, taking in the opulent decor before settling on Arthur. Arthur stood up, his tall frame towering over Julian. Julian, thank you for coming. Elena has been working hard to help me put together this proposal. Elena smiled, trying to ease any tension. We want to offer you and your family a chance to rebuild your business from scratch. We'll provide guidance and mentorship to help you learn from your mistakes and start anew. Julian's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched in anger. You think I'm just going to take this lying down? You're the one who ruined me, Arthur. You're the one who destroyed my family's reputation. Arthur's expression remained calm, but Elena could sense a hint of sadness behind his eyes. Julian, I know what happened was difficult for you and your family, but I'm not trying to punish you. I'm trying to give you a chance to learn from your mistakes and start again. Elena took a step forward, her voice gentle but firm. And we're willing to do it because we believe that everyone deserves a second chance. We've all made mistakes, Julian. The question is, are you willing to take this chance and make the most of it? Julian's gaze flicked between Arthur and Elena before finally settling on the floor. He took a deep breath, his shoulders sagging in defeat. Arthur walked over to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Julian, I know this isn't going to be easy, but I'm willing to work with you to help you rebuild your business and your family's reputation. You just have to be willing to put in the effort. Elena watched as Julian slowly nodded, his eyes welling up with tears. For a moment, she saw a glimmer of the person he used to be, the one who had been kind to her when everyone else was cruel. Arthur smiled warmly. That's it then, Julian. Well, start working on the proposal tomorrow. Let's get your family back on their feet and show them that there's always hope for redemption. As they left Arthur's office, Elena felt a sense of hope wash over her. She knew that this wasn't going to be easy. Rebuilding a business and a reputation took time and effort. But she also knew that Arthur was the kind of person who would stand by his word, who would give people a second chance when they deserved it. And maybe, just maybe, Julian Vane would learn from his mistakes and start anew. Arthur's office was abuzz with activity as the team worked tirelessly to craft a proposal for Julian's family business. Arthur himself sat at the head of the table, guiding the discussion with his characteristic calm and confidence. Elena perched on the edge of her seat, taking furious notes as the ideas flowed back and forth. She had always known that Arthur was intelligent, but it amazed her how quickly he grasped complex concepts and tailored them to Julian's specific situation. As they worked, Elena couldn't help but notice the subtle dynamics at play. Julian himself seemed subdued, his usual arrogance tempered by the weight of his family's impending bankruptcy. His sister, Sophia, hovered on the periphery, her eyes darting between Arthur and her brother with a mix of worry and pleading. Arthur's assistant, Rachel, provided a steady stream of snacks and refreshments, her efficiency earning nods of approval from the team. It was clear that she had earned Arthur's trust, and Elena found herself admiring the way he treated his staff like family. As the meeting drew to a close, Arthur leaned back in his chair, his eyes scanning the room. "All right, let's summarize what we've got so far," he said, his voice firm but encouraging. "Julian, you'll need to liquidate some of your assets to pay off debts and cover immediate expenses. Sophia will oversee the rebranding process, while our marketing team develops a new strategy to attract customers." Elena watched as Julian's face contorted in frustration, but Arthur remained patient, offering words of wisdom and reassurance. "It won't be easy," he acknowledged, "but with hard work and determination, I have no doubt you can turn things around." As the meeting adjourned, Elena slipped out of the office, her mind whirling with ideas for the Vane family's new venture. She felt a sense of pride knowing that she had played a small part in Arthur's plan to give them a second chance. The next day, Elena and Arthur met with Julian and Sophia once more, this time to review the proposal in greater detail. The room was filled with maps, graphs, and financial projections, but Elena's eyes were drawn to Arthur himself, his intensity and focus a palpable force in the room. As they delved deeper into the numbers, Julian's initial skepticism began to give way to curiosity, Sophia's worry-lined face softening ever so slightly. It was clear that Arthur had a gift for communicating complex ideas in simple terms, a talent that would serve them all well in the days ahead. The sun was setting as they wrapped up their meeting, casting a warm glow over the room. Elena felt a sense of satisfaction wash over her, knowing that she had been a part of something truly special, a chance to rebuild, to start anew, and to prove that even the most seemingly insurmountable challenges could be overcome. As they parted ways, Arthur placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "You know, Elena, I think we're onto something here. With your help, I have no doubt we can turn things around for Julian and Sophia." Elena smiled, feeling a sense of belonging she had never known before. "I'm happy to be a part of it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Arthur's gaze lingered on hers, the air between them charged with an unspoken understanding. It was as if they both knew that this moment, this chance to start anew, was just the beginning of something truly special. The university's grand atrium was bustling with students and faculty, all gathered for the annual Founders Day celebration. Arthur, dressed in his finest suit, stood out among the crowd, his charisma and confidence radiating like a beacon. Elena, looking radiant in her emerald green dress, flanked him to his left, their shoulders almost touching. Julian Vane, his usual arrogance tempered by the events of the past few weeks, hovered nearby, shooting Arthur resentful glances. Sophia, however, looked more at ease, chatting with some classmates while keeping a watchful eye on her friend. As they mingled, whispers and murmurs began to circulate about the new owner of Blackwood University. News of Arthur's identity had spread like wildfire, and people were both stunned and intrigued by the revelation. Many had never seen him without his sunglasses, or in anything other than casual attire, so the sight of him in a tailored suit, commanding attention with ease, was a novelty. Elena felt a sense of pride and accomplishment as she watched Arthur effortlessly field questions from curious students and faculty members. She had played a significant role in helping him develop his proposal, and it was clear that her input had been invaluable. As they made their way through the throngs of people, Arthur paused to shake hands with various dignitaries, his presence commanding respect without being overbearing. Elena couldn't help but feel a sense of awe as she watched him work the room like a seasoned politician. Eventually, they reached the stage, where the university's president was waiting to present the new owner with a commemorative plaque and a warm welcome. As Arthur accepted the honor, his eyes met Elena's, and for a fleeting moment, it seemed like nothing else existed in that crowded atrium. The ceremony concluded, and the gathering began to disperse. Julian approached them, his expression a mix of anger and frustration. "You know, Sterling," he sneered, "I never thought I'd see the day when you'd buy your way into this school." Arthur's smile was cold and calculated. Ah, Vane, always so quick to judge. But then again, that's what happens when one is blinded by privilege. Julian's face darkened further, but before he could respond, Arthur turned to Elena and Sophia. Shall we? I believe it's time for us to get down to business. The trio departed, leaving the tumultuous atmosphere behind. As they walked, the weight of their new reality began to sink in. Arthur had bought the university, effectively dismantling Julian's family empire and giving him a chance to rebuild his own life. Elena felt a surge of excitement mixed with trepidation. What did this mean for her future? Their meeting was soon interrupted by frantic calls from various departments, all clamoring for Arthur's attention. The new owner was determined to make his mark on the university, and that began with addressing the long-standing issues plaguing the institution. Elena watched as Arthur effortlessly juggled multiple conversations at once, his mind working overtime to solve the problems he had inherited. She couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for being included in this new era. She was no longer just the charity case scholarship student who had caught Arthur's attention. She was now an integral part of his vision. As the day wore on, Elena found herself swept up in the whirlwind of change. Arthur presented her with a proposal to establish a new research center, one that would focus on innovative solutions for social and environmental issues. The prospect thrilled her. This was an opportunity to make a real difference, to leave a lasting legacy. As they parted ways at the end of the day, Elena turned to Arthur with a question burning in her mind. "What's next?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Arthur smiled, his expression cryptic. "We'll be making some big changes around here, and I think you'll find that being part of this new era has its perks." Elena's heart skipped a beat as she realized what he was hinting at. Arthur was going to reveal the truth about her involvement in the proposal to Julian and Sophia, and it would have far-reaching consequences for all of them. The sun had set on another day at Blackwood University, but Elena knew that this was only the beginning. As she walked away from Arthur, she felt a sense of excitement mixed with trepidation. What lay ahead, and how would their lives change as a result? As the days passed, the campus buzzed with activity as Arthur implemented his plans to transform Blackwood University into a hub for innovation and social impact. Elena was at the forefront of this revolution, working closely with Arthur on the research center proposal. She was amazed by the speed and efficiency with which he tackled each challenge, always staying one step ahead. Julian and Sophia, still reeling from their sudden loss of power and influence, were now facing the consequences of their bullying behavior. Their once loyal followers had abandoned them, and they struggled to regain footing in a campus where Arthur's vision was rewriting the rules. Arthur's first move was to create a new admissions committee, one that prioritized diversity, equity, and inclusion. The old guard, led by Julian's father, resisted this change with all their might, but Arthur's determination and influence ultimately won out. As the weeks went by, Elena found herself increasingly entrenched in Arthur's inner circle. She was part of a small team working tirelessly to bring his vision to life, and she reveled in the sense of purpose that came with being a key player in this new era. One afternoon, as they worked late into the night in Arthur's office, he turned to her with a mischievous glint in his eye. "I have an idea," he said, his voice low and conspiratorial. Elena's curiosity was piqued. She leaned in, eager to hear what Arthur had planned next. He smiled, seeming to savor the moment before revealing his surprise. "I'm going to throw a party," he announced, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "A party that will change everything." Elena raised an eyebrow. "A party?" It sounded unlike anything she would have expected from Arthur Sterling, the shrewd businessman and leader. But as she looked at him, she saw the genuine enthusiasm in his expression, and her curiosity got the better of her. "What kind of party?" she asked, her tone cautious but intrigued. Arthur leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers together. "A masquerade ball," he said, his voice dripping with mystery. "Well, invite the entire university, and everyone will come dressed as their alter egos. It's going to be a night like no other. Elena felt her heart skip a beat as she realized what Arthur was planning. This party would not only be a celebration of the new era at Blackwood, but also a chance for people to let go of their inhibitions and truly be themselves. "It sounds incredible," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But why do it now?" Arthur's smile grew wider. "Because we're at a crossroads," he said. "We've taken the first steps toward creating a better future for Blackwood, but there's still much work to be done. This party will be a catalyst for change, a chance for people to let go of their fears and doubts and embrace what's next." As Elena left Arthur's office that night, she felt a sense of excitement mixed with trepidation. She knew that this masquerade ball would be a turning point in the lives of everyone involved, but she had no idea what lay ahead. The days leading up to the party were a whirlwind of activity as Elena and her team worked tirelessly to bring Arthur's vision to life. They transformed the university's grand hall into a surreal wonderland, complete with twinkling lights, elaborate masks, and lavish decorations. As the night of the masquerade ball approached, Elena found herself growing more and more anxious. She had never been one for big parties or social events, but this was different. This was about more than just having fun. It was about creating a moment that would change everything. And then, on the night of the party, everything came together in a swirl of music, laughter, and magic. As Elena put on her mask and stepped into the grand hall, she felt like she was stepping into a dream world. The atmosphere was electric, with people mingling and laughing as they revealed their true selves behind their masks. Arthur stood at the center of it all, his eyes shining with a sense of triumph and purpose. As Elena looked around at the sea of faces, she knew that this was just the beginning. This masquerade ball would be remembered for years to come, a symbol of the power of change and the limitless possibilities that lay ahead. As the night wore on, the music and laughter continued to fill the grand hall. Elena had never felt so alive, surrounded by people who were finally being their true selves. She couldn't help but feel a sense of pride knowing that Arthur's vision was coming to life. Arthur himself seemed to be feeding off the energy of the party. He moved through the crowds with ease, chatting and laughing with everyone he met. Elena had never seen him so carefree, and it only made her heart skip a beat. As she scanned the room, Elena spotted Julian Vane looking more miserable than ever. His usual arrogance seemed to have abandoned him, replaced by a look of desperation. She almost felt sorry for him, but then she remembered all the cruel things he had done to Arthur. Arthur caught her eye and nodded in Julian's direction. Elena followed his gaze and saw that he was standing alone, his mask slipping down his face. She knew what Arthur was thinking. It was time to put an end to Julian's misery once and for all. Without hesitation, Arthur strode over to Julian and pulled off his mask. The room fell silent as everyone turned to stare at the humiliated bully. Julian's eyes filled with tears as he realized that his reputation was being torn apart before his very eyes. Arthur leaned in close and whispered something in Julian's ear. Elena couldn't help but wonder what it was, but she had a feeling it wasn't going to be good for Julian. The music started up again, and the partygoers began to murmur among themselves. Elena watched as Arthur walked away from Julian, leaving him to his misery. She knew that this was just the beginning of the end for Julian Vane. As the night wore on, Elena found herself lost in thought. She had never felt so proud to be a part of something bigger than herself. The masquerade ball was more than just a party. It was a symbol of change and a reminder that people could be whatever they wanted to be if they only dared to take the leap. Elena glanced around at the sea of faces, feeling like she was part of something truly special. She knew that this was going to be a night that would go down in history, one that would be remembered for years to come. As she turned back to Arthur, Elena saw that he was watching her with an intensity that made her heart race. She felt like he could see right through her mask and into her very soul. Without saying a word, Arthur held out his hand, offering her the chance to take off her own mask. Elena hesitated for a moment before taking it, feeling a sense of freedom wash over her as she revealed her true self. Arthur's eyes lit up with excitement as he pulled off his own mask, revealing the man beneath. The room fell silent once again, but this time, it was because everyone was staring at the two people who had captured their attention. Elena felt like she was drowning in Arthur's gaze, like she was being pulled towards him with an irresistible force. She knew that this was it. This was the moment when everything would change. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything went dark. The music stopped, and the lights flickered out. Elena found herself standing alone in the silence, unsure of what was happening or where she was. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, Elena saw that she was standing at the edge of a cliff. Below her lay a sea of uncertainty, stretching out before her like an endless horizon. Elena felt a sense of trepidation wash over her as she peered into the void. She knew that this was it. This was the moment when everything would change. As Elena stood at the edge of the cliff, the darkness seemed to swirl around her like a living entity. She felt like she was floating above it all, unsure of how to proceed or what lay ahead. The silence was oppressive, punctuated only by the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore. Arthur's words echoed in her mind, "This is the moment when everything will change." Change was coming, but Elena had no idea what shape it would take. She felt like she was standing at a crossroads, with multiple paths stretching out before her like a maze. As she stood there, frozen in indecision, the darkness began to dissipate, replaced by the warm glow of lanterns. The air grew thick with the scent of salt water and seaweed, as the sounds of laughter and music drifted up from below. Elena's gaze fell upon Arthur, standing at the edge of the cliff alongside her. He was watching her with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. She felt like she was drowning in his eyes once again, but this time there was something more, something almost hopeful. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice low and husky. Elena nodded, feeling a sense of trepidation wash over her as Arthur took her hand. Together, they descended the winding staircase that led down to the beach. The party was in full swing, with students laughing and dancing under the starlight. The music was lively, a fusion of jazz and rock that seemed to match the rhythm of Elena's heart. Arthur led her through the crowds, navigating effortlessly around clusters of people. Elena felt like she was floating alongside him, her senses heightened as she took in the sights and sounds. As they reached the edge of the dance floor, Arthur pulled her close, his eyes burning with an intensity that left her breathless. "Let's show them what we're made of," he whispered, his mouth inches from hers. Elena nodded, feeling a sense of reckless abandon wash over her as they plunged into the fray. The music seemed to swell around them, building in tempo and intensity as they danced. The night was a blur of color and sound, with Elena lost in the whirlwind of movement and emotion. She felt like she was living on the edge, with Arthur's hand guiding her through the chaos. As the hours passed, the party showed no signs of slowing down. The music continued to pulse, drawing in more and more students as the night wore on. Elena felt like she was caught in a whirlwind, spinning out of control alongside Arthur. She had never felt so alive, so free from the constraints of her old life. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the party began to wind down. The music slowed, and the laughter grew more subdued as students started to make their way back to their dorms. Arthur pulled Elena close, his eyes burning with an intensity that left her breathless once again. "I think it's time we took our leave," he whispered, his mouth inches from hers. Elena nodded, feeling a sense of reluctance wash over her as they said their goodbyes and made their way back to the castle. The night had been a roller coaster ride of emotions, with Elena unsure of what lay ahead. But one thing was certain. She knew that her life would never be the same again. As they stepped out of the party and into the crisp morning air, Arthur's grip on Elena's hand remained firm, as if he didn't want to let go. The castle loomed behind them, its towers reaching towards the sky like skeletal fingers. Elena felt a shiver run down her spine as she glanced up at the imposing structure. She had never been one for grand gestures or displays of wealth, but there was something undeniably captivating about the ancient architecture. "I have to ask," Arthur said, his voice low and husky. "Did you enjoy yourself tonight?" Elena's eyes snapped back to him, her cheeks still flushed from the excitement of the party. I didn't know what to expect at first," she admitted. "But once I let go and just went with it, I had an amazing time." Arthur's smile was a thing of beauty, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he laughed. "That's exactly how I wanted you to feel. You deserve it, Elena." Their walk took them across the castle grounds, the sun slowly rising over the turrets and battlements. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and fresh grass, a far cry from the sterile atmosphere of Blackwood University. As they strolled, Arthur asked her questions about herself, probing for details that would help him understand what drove her. Elena found herself opening up to him in ways she never had with anyone before. It was as if he really saw her, and it was both exhilarating and terrifying. When they reached the edge of the castle's inner courtyard, Arthur stopped and turned to face her. The morning light danced across his features, casting a golden glow over his skin. "Elena," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "I want you to know that I value your friendship above all else." "Friendship?" Elena's heart skipped a beat as she searched his eyes for any sign of deception. But there was nothing but sincerity staring back at her. I appreciate that, Arthur," she replied, trying to sound casual despite the turmoil brewing inside her. Arthur's grip on her hand tightened, his fingers interlacing with hers in a gentle yet possessive motion. "I want you to come with me to my estate today," he said, his eyes burning with an intensity that left her breathless once again. "We can discuss business matters." Elena felt a thrill run through her at the promise of adventure and mystery. She nodded, her agreement hanging in the air like a challenge. As they walked towards the waiting limousine, Elena couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. Was this the start of something new, or just another chapter in Arthur's game of deception? The morning sun cast long shadows across the castle grounds as they disappeared into the darkness of the limousine, leaving behind a trail of secrets and unspoken desires. As the vehicle pulled away from the curb, Elena felt the weight of her old life slowly lifting, like the mist that clung to the castle walls at dawn. She was caught in a whirlwind, spinning out of control alongside Arthur Sterling, the most powerful man she had ever met. And yet, despite the uncertainty that lay ahead, Elena couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and anticipation. After all, what could possibly go wrong when you were dancing with the devil himself? As the limousine glided smoothly through the city streets, Elena couldn't help but feel like she was living in a dream. The opulent interior, complete with plush leather seats and crystal chandeliers, seemed like a far cry from her humble apartment back at Blackwood University. She glanced over at Arthur, who sat beside her with an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. "So, what's the plan for today?" Elena asked, trying to sound casual despite the thrill coursing through her veins. "What kind of business matters do we need to discuss?" Arthur smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he leaned back into the seat. Just a few arrangements," he said, his voice dripping with mystery. "Nothing too terribly exciting, I assure you." Elena raised an eyebrow, sensing that there was more to it than that. But Arthur's expression remained unreadable, leaving her wondering what lay ahead. As the limousine continued on its journey, Elena found herself lost in thought. She couldn't believe she was sitting alongside Arthur Sterling, one of the most powerful men in the world. And yet, despite the circumstances that had brought them together, she felt a strange sense of connection to him, as if they shared a secret language that only they understood. The limousine pulled up to a sleek, modern estate on the outskirts of the city. Elena's eyes widened as Arthur led her out onto the sun-drenched patio, where a breathtaking view of the surrounding countryside stretched out before them. "This is incredible," she breathed, taking in the sheer scale and beauty of the property. Arthur chuckled, his eyes glinting with amusement. "Yes, I suppose it's a decent place to live," he said, shrugging off his jacket as he settled onto a plush couch. Elena sat down beside him, feeling like a queen in her own right. The opulence and grandeur of the estate was almost overwhelming, but Arthur seemed completely at home here. "So, what do you want to talk about?" Elena asked, trying to sound nonchalant despite the fact that she was sitting on the edge of her seat with excitement. Arthur leaned forward, his eyes burning with intensity. "I think it's time we discussed your future," he said, his voice low and husky. Elena's heart skipped a beat as Arthur reached out to take her hand. His fingers intertwined with hers once again, sending shivers down her spine. "I have an offer for you," he said, his eyes glinting with mischief. "One that I think you'll find incredibly appealing." Elena felt like she was drowning in a sea of possibilities as Arthur leaned in closer, his breath whispering against her ear. "You see, Elena, I've always believed that the best investments are those that benefit both parties," he whispered. "And I think you and I could make a formidable team." As Arthur's words trailed off, Elena felt like she was standing at the edge of a precipice, staring out into an unknown future. She knew that she had to be careful, that getting involved with Arthur Sterling would only lead to trouble. But as his eyes locked onto hers, she found herself helpless against the tide of attraction and curiosity. "And so," she nodded, her agreement hanging in the air like a challenge. As they walked off into the sunset, Elena couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. Was this the start of something new, or just another chapter in Arthur's game of deception? She knew that she had to be careful, that getting too close would only lead to heartache and betrayal. But as she glanced over at Arthur, her heart racing with excitement, she couldn't help but feel a sense of adventure and possibility. And so, they disappeared into the distance, leaving behind a trail of secrets and unspoken desires. The morning sun cast long shadows across the estate grounds as they walked off into the unknown, their footsteps echoing through the silence like the beat of a drum.